Three young identical triplet girls vanished without a trace from a quiet Ohio town in 1981, disappearing while playing outside their family home. But 20 years later, their mother discovers a crucial detail hidden in an old photograph, a shocking discovery that would expose what really happened to them. Before we begin, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dive mystery stories. The morning sun filtered through the stained glass windows of Willow Creek Community Church, casting colored patterns across the worn wooden pews. Linda Calloway sat in her usual spot, third row from the front, her husband Sam beside her. At 52 years old, Linda still carried herself with quiet dignity, though 2 decades of grief had etched permanent shadows beneath her eyes that had spent countless hours searching faces in crowds, always hoping. Sam, 54, sat with his arm resting gently along the back of the pew behind his wife. His hair had gone almost completely gray since 1981. They had attended this church every Sunday for the past 20 years, finding what little peace they could in routine and faith. Pastor Williams concluded his sermon about forgiveness and healing. The organ began its closing hymn, and the congregation stood. Linda reached for her hymnal, her movements automatic after so many years of the same ritual. As the final notes faded and people began gathering their belongings, a burst of laughter echoed from the hallway outside the sanctuary. Linda's head turned sharply toward the sound, children's laughter, high and bright. Through the open double doors, she could see 2 young girls, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, chasing each other down the corridor. They wore matching pink dresses with white collars. Their dark hair was pulled back in identical ponytails that bounced as they ran. They were twins, identical twins. Linda's hymnal slipped from her fingers, hitting the pew with a dull thud. "Linda?" Sam's voice seemed to come from very far away, but Linda was already moving, pushing past the family in front of them, her purse sliding off her shoulder and forgotten on the pew. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she stepped into the aisle, her eyes locked on those 2 running figures. She reached the hallway just as one of the girls darted past, squealing with delight as her sister chased after her. Without thinking, Linda's hand shot out and caught the nearest girl's shoulder. The child turned, her laughter dying instantly as she looked up at the stranger who had grabbed her. For a heartbeat, Linda stared into the girl's face, the round cheeks, the dark eyes, the small nose, and something inside her shattered all over again. Her hands moved to cup the child's face, trembling violently. "Lila?" The name came out as barely a whisper. "Lila, baby, is that you?" The girl's eyes widened with fear. She tried to pull away, but Linda's grip tightened. "No, don't be afraid," Linda said urgently, tears streaming down her face now. "It's Mommy, it's me. I've been looking for you." "Hey," a woman's sharp voice cut through the moment. "What are you doing? Let go of my daughter." A younger woman in her 30s rushed forward, pulling the frightened girl away from Linda's grasp. The second twin ran to hide behind her mother's legs, both children now staring at Linda with identical expressions of alarm. I'm so sorry," Linda said, reaching toward them again. "But you don't understand. My girls, my triplets." "Lady, I don't know what you're talking about, but you need to back off right now." The mother wrapped her arms protectively around both daughters, her voice sharp with fear and anger. Sam appeared at Linda's side, gently but firmly pulling her back. "I'm terribly sorry," Sam said to the frightened mother, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "My wife didn't mean any harm. She just—" "Our daughters," Linda managed to say through her tears, her voice breaking. "We lost our daughters 20 years ago." The mother's expression shifted from anger to confusion. "What?" Pastor Williams stepped forward, his weathered face full of compassion. He placed a gentle hand on the woman's shoulder. "Mrs. Bennett, this is Linda and Sam Calloway. They've been members of this congregation for many years." He paused, his voice growing softer. "Their 3 daughters, Identical triplets, 6 years old, vanished from their front yard in the summer of 1981. It was one of the most tragic cases this town has ever seen. The woman's face changed completely, anger melting into shock and then deep sympathy. She looked down at her own daughters, still clinging to her legs, then back at Linda, with new understanding. "Oh my God," Mrs. Bennett whispered. "I'm so sorry. We just moved here last month. I had no idea." She looked at Linda, her eyes filling with tears. "I can't even imagine what you've been through." "It's okay," Linda said, wiping her eyes with shaking hands. "I'm the one who should apologize. I frightened your daughters. When I saw them, they looked so much like—" Her voice broke again. Mrs. Bennett reached out and touched Linda's arm briefly. "Please don't apologize. If I lost my girls, She couldn't finish the sentence, pulling her daughters closer. Others in the crowd murmured in recognition now, longtime members who remembered the search parties, the candlelight vigils, the yellow ribbons tied to every tree on their street. "The whole town searched for weeks," an elderly woman said quietly. "We all prayed you'd find them." "We never did," Sam said, his arm around Linda's shoulders. Mrs. Bennett's eyes were wet now. "I'm so sorry. If there's anything I can do—" "You've been very kind," Sam said. "We should go. Linda needs to rest." Pastor Williams nodded. "That's a good idea." He looked at Mrs. Bennett. "Would you mind taking the girls to the fellowship hall? I think they'd enjoy some cookies while things calm down here." Mrs. Bennett nodded, ushering her daughters away, but glancing back at Linda with profound sympathy. The pastor turned to Linda and Sam, his expression filled with gentle concern. "Why don't you two head home? I'll explain things to everyone here." "Thank you, Pastor," Sam said, shaking his hand gratefully. Linda approached Mrs. Bennett one more time before leaving. "I'm truly sorry for scaring your girls." "Please," Mrs. Bennett said, her voice thick with emotion. "Don't give it another thought. I understand completely now." She hesitated, then added softly, "I'll be praying for you, for your family." Linda nodded, unable to speak, and allowed Sam to guide her toward the exit. As they walked through the crowd, several congregation members reached out to touch Linda's hand to offer quiet words of support. After 20 years, the wound was still raw for this community. Sam helped Linda into the car and they sat in silence for a long moment before he started the engine. "I'm sorry," Linda whispered. For just a second I thought—" "I know," Sam said, reaching for her hand. "I know." The drive home passed in heavy silence. Sam kept glancing at his wife, worried about the vacant look in her eyes. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. Over the years, Linda had seen her daughters in crowds, in passing cars, in the faces of strangers. Their house sat on a quiet street lined with oak trees, the same house where they had raised their daughters for the first 6 years of their lives. Sam had suggested moving dozens of times, but Linda always refused. "What if they come back and can't find us?" So they had stayed. Linda walked directly upstairs without removing her coat. Sam followed, knowing where she was headed. The door to the girls' bedroom had been left exactly as it was on the day they disappeared. 3 small beds with matching quilts, a bookshelf full of picture books, a toy chest overflowing with dolls and stuffed animals. Linda sank onto the edge of Lila's bed and finally broke down completely. Deep, wrenching sobs that she had been holding back since the church. Sam sat beside her and pulled her into his arms, letting her cry into his shoulder. When Linda's tears finally subsided, he stood and walked to the dresser. "Remember when we used to look through their photos together?" Sam said gently, reaching for one of the framed pictures on the dresser. "Maybe it would help to—" His elbow accidentally knocked against a silver frame, a photo of the 3 girls with Evelyn Hartwell at the park, all 4 of them smiling at the camera. Evelyn's late husband had taken the photo years ago, back when they were still friends. The frame tilted, teetered, and crashed to the floor. The sound of shattering glass made them both freeze. "Oh no," Sam muttered, bending down to pick up the pieces. Linda knelt beside him, carefully lifting the frame. The glass had broken into several large shards, and the photograph had come loose from its backing. She stared at the photo in her hands, at the three identical little girls with their arms around each other, and Evelyn standing behind them, hands resting on their shoulders, smiling. For a long moment Linda didn't move. She just stared at that face, Evelyn's face. "Linda," Sam touched her arm. "Are you okay?" "This photo," Linda whispered. "Sam, look at this photo." "What about it?" Linda's hands began to tremble. "Evelyn, she's with our daughters. She loved them so much. She used to visit us all the time. The girls would run to her, call her Aunt Eve." "I know, honey, but that was before everything happened, before you discovered—" "Before I discovered she was stealing from the company," Linda interrupted, her voice growing stronger. "Before I reported her, before she went to prison." She looked up at Sam, her eyes wide. "Sam, what if—" "Linda, don't." Sam's voice was gentle but firm. "We've been through this before. The police investigated everyone we knew. But did they really investigate Evelyn?" Linda stood abruptly, still clutching the photograph. "Sam, think about it. Our daughters disappeared without a trace. No screams, no struggle, no witnesses. How is that possible unless—" her voice caught. "Unless they went with someone willingly, someone they knew, someone they trusted." Sam's expression became guarded. "The police would have looked at Evelyn if there was any reason to suspect her." "Would they? She was in prison when it happened, or—" Linda paused, her mind racing. Or was she? She moved to the closet and pulled down a box from the top shelf, the box containing all the police reports, all the documentation from the investigation. She'd kept everything for 20 years, organized in folders, just in case there was ever a break in the case. Linda rifled through the papers with shaking hands. "Look, the detective's notes. They tried to contact Evelyn for questioning, but by the time they reached her, weeks after the girls disappeared, she'd already been released from prison and moved away. They did one phone interview, one, and she said she was sorry to hear about what happened, but she hadn't been in the area in months." "And they believed her," Sam said quietly. "Why wouldn't they? She was supposed to be in prison. They had no reason to suspect her." Linda's voice rose with agitation now. "But Sam, the photo just fell. Right now, right when we were talking about the girls. After 20 years of sitting on that dresser, it falls today, the day I had another breakdown at church, the day I was praying for answers." Sam looked at the shattered frame on the floor, then at his wife's face. He knew that look, that desperate need to believe there was still hope, still a chance. "Linda, even if we wanted to look into Evelyn, we don't know where she is. She disappeared 20 years ago." Linda grabbed the police file again, scanning through the pages desperately. The detective's notes mentioned she was originally from Michigan, a small town. I remember her mentioning it once when we worked together. She said her parents had property there. "That was decades ago, Linda. She could be anywhere by now." "It's something. It's more than we've had in years." Linda's voice was steel now. "Sam, I know this sounds crazy. I know I've chased false leads before, but this feels different. This feels like—" She paused, struggling for the right words. "Like a sign, like God is finally answering my prayers." Sam was quiet for a long moment. Then he said carefully, "Linda, I need you to think about this logically. Even if Evelyn was somehow involved, what motive would she have had?" Linda met his eyes. "Revenge. I destroyed her life, Sam. She lost her job, her freedom, her reputation, all because of me. And she—" Linda's voice dropped. "She'd had 3 miscarriages. 3. She and her husband tried for years to have children, and she lost every single one. And then her husband died in that accident 2 months before her arrest. And she had nothing. No family, no children, no future." "You think she blamed you for all of that?" "I know she did. She told me, Sam, the day before her sentencing. She looked me right in the eye and said, 'You have everything, a husband who loves you, 3 beautiful daughters, a perfect life. And you destroyed the one thing I had left.'" I thought she meant her career. But what if— Linda's hands were shaking violently now. What if she meant she was going to take from me what I had taken from her? Sam's face had gone pale. That's a huge leap, Linda. Is it? Think about how our daughters disappeared. No violence, no ransom demand, no sign of struggle. They just vanished. Like someone made them disappear, someone who knew their routine, someone they would go with willingly. Linda's voice broke. Someone like Aunt Eve. Sam sank down onto one of the small beds, the police reports scattered around him. For 20 years, he'd tried to be the rational one, the one who kept them grounded when hope threatened to destroy them with disappointment. But something about Linda's reasoning, about that photograph falling at this exact moment. Even if you're right, and that's a big if, we have no idea where Evelyn is now, no address, no phone number, nothing. Then I'll find out. Linda's voice was fierce with determination. Tomorrow morning I'm calling Detective Morrison. I'm asking her to look into Evelyn's whereabouts after her release, where she went, where she might be now. And if the detective won't help, then we'll go to Michigan ourselves. We'll find that town. We'll ask if anyone remembers her or knows where she went. Sam looked at his wife, at the desperate hope and terrible conviction in her eyes. After 20 years of grief, after countless false leads and crushing disappointments, she was asking him to chase one more ghost. But something about that photograph falling, about the timing, about Linda's intuition. Okay, he said quietly. We'll call Detective Morrison. We'll see what she can find out. But Linda, he gripped her hands tightly. If this is another dead end, if there's nothing there, we have to accept it. We can't keep tearing ourselves apart like this. I know, Linda whispered, though they both knew she might be lying. That night, Linda couldn't sleep. While Sam tossed restlessly beside her, she sat at the desk in their bedroom, staring at the photograph, at Evelyn's face, at her daughter's innocent smiles. She kept replaying that moment, the photo falling, the glass shattering, the sudden, overwhelming certainty that flooded through her. Was it intuition, divine intervention, or just the desperate delusion of a grieving mother who couldn't let go? She picked up the photograph and whispered a prayer, the same prayer she'd prayed every night for 20 years. Please, God, please let them be alive. Please let me find them. Please give me a sign. And as she stared at Evelyn's face in that photograph, something deep in her gut told her this was it. This was the answer she'd been waiting for. At 9 a.m. sharp, Linda called Detective Sarah Morrison. The detective had been working their cold case for the past 15 years, ever since the previous detective retired. Mrs. Calloway, Morrison answered, recognizing the number. Her voice was kind but tired. She'd probably taken this call dozens of times over the years. Is everything all right? I need to ask you about Evelyn Hartwell. There was a pause. Evelyn Hartwell, your former co-worker? Yes. Detective, I need to know, was she really in prison when our daughters disappeared? Another pause, longer this time. Linda could hear the detective typing. Mrs. Calloway, we looked at everyone connected to your family 20 years ago. Ms. Hartwell was incarcerated at the time of the abduction. Can you verify that? Can you tell me exactly when she was released? More typing. Hold on, I'm pulling up the corrections database now. A long pause. Evelyn Hartwell, convicted January 15, 1981, sentenced to 18 months for embezzlement, released. The detective's voice changed slightly. Released June 1, 1981. Linda's breath caught. That's 11 days before our daughters disappeared. Yes, but Mrs. Calloway, she was required to check into a halfway house as part of her parole. Let me check the records. More typing sounds. Harbor House facility in Cleveland, approximately 90 miles from Willow Creek. She checked in on June 1st and was required to remain there for a minimum of 3 months. What's a halfway house? Linda asked. It's a transitional living facility for recently released inmates. It helps them reintegrate into society while still under supervision. Residents have to follow strict rules, curfews, mandatory counseling sessions, random drug tests. They have to sign in and out, and they can't leave without permission. So she was there on June 12th, when my daughters were taken? According to the records, yes. She signed in for a mandatory group therapy session from 2 to 4 p.m. on June 12th, right during the estimated window when your daughters disappeared. Linda's grip tightened on the phone, but did anyone actually see her in that room, or did they just check a sign-in sheet? There was a long silence. Then Detective Morrison said carefully, "The facility's attendance records show she signed in for the session. That was considered sufficient verification at the time." "Sign-in sheets can be forged," Linda said. "Someone else could have signed her name while she drove to Willow Creek." "Mrs. Calloway." "Detective, please," Linda's voice cracked. "Just listen to me for a moment. Evelyn had motive. I destroyed her career, her reputation. She spent 6 months in prison because of me. She'd lost 3 pregnancies. Her husband had just died. She had nothing left. And our daughters, they knew her. They loved her. They called her Aunt Eve. They would have gotten into her car without question if she'd offered them ice cream or a trip to the park." Detective Morrison was quiet for a moment. Linda could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. "What made you think of Evelyn Hartwell after all these years?" the detective asked finally. Linda hesitated. How could she explain the photograph falling, the sense of divine intervention, the mother's intuition that had suddenly crystallized into certainty? "A photograph fell and broke yesterday," she said simply. "A picture of Evelyn with our daughters. And I had this feeling, this certainty, that she was involved somehow." "A feeling," the detective repeated, and Linda could hear the skepticism in her voice. "I know how it sounds. But Detective Morrison, in 20 years, we've never had a single lead, not one. Our daughters vanished without a trace. And now," Linda's voice strengthened, "now I'm asking you to look into this. Please. Find out where Evelyn went after she left that halfway house. Find out where she is now." There was a long sigh on the other end of the line. "All right, Mrs. Calloway, I'll look into it. But I need you to promise me something. Don't do anything on your own. Don't try to find Evelyn yourself. If there's any chance she was involved, approaching her could be dangerous, and it could destroy any case we might be able to build." "I promise," Linda said. But even as she said it, she was already pulling up search engines on her phone, typing Evelyn Hartwell into Google. 2 days of agonizing waiting followed. Linda searched online obsessively, finding nothing. Sam tried to keep them both busy with errands and chores, but Linda's mind was always elsewhere, always circling back to Evelyn and the possibility, the terrifying, hopeful possibility, that their daughters might still be alive. Finally, on Wednesday afternoon, Detective Morrison called back. "Mrs. Calloway, I did some digging into Evelyn Hartwell's whereabouts after her release." Linda's hand trembled as she put the phone on speaker so Sam could hear. "What did you find?" "Evelyn completed her required stay at Harbor House on September 15, 1981, 3 months after checking in. As part of her parole conditions, she was required to provide a forwarding address to her parole officer." "Where did she go?" "She listed her parents' property in Ridgewood Hollow, Michigan. It's a small town about 4 hours north of Willow Creek. Population around 500 people. Her parents owned a farm there. It had been in the family for generations." "Is she still there?" Linda could barely breathe. "I don't know. According to county records, the property was sold in 1983. After that, there's no paper trail, no tax records under her name, no employment history, no driver's license renewals. She essentially disappeared." "So she violated her parole," Sam said. "Possibly. Or she changed her identity. Either way, after 1983, Evelyn Hartwell stops existing on paper." Linda was already standing, already moving toward the stairs where she kept their suitcases. "We're going to Michigan, to that town. Someone there must remember her. Someone must know where she went." "Mrs. Calloway, I strongly advise against that. Even if you could locate someone who knew Evelyn, your intuition about a photograph isn't evidence. We'd need concrete proof before we could reopen the investigation or bring charges." "Then we'll find proof," Linda said. "Mrs. Calloway, Detective, I've waited 20 years. 20 years of not knowing if my daughters are dead or alive. If there's even the slightest chance that Evelyn took them, that they're out there somewhere, I have to know. I have to try." There was a long silence. Then Detective Morrison said quietly, "If you do go to Michigan, you need to be very careful. Don't approach Evelyn if you find her. Don't confront her. Call me immediately. Do you understand?" "Yes." "I mean it, Mrs. Calloway. If Evelyn Hartwell did take your daughters, she's had 20 years to build a life with them. She's had 20 years to make them forget who they really are. If you spook her, if you give her any warning, she could run again. And this time, we might never find them." Linda's eyes filled with tears. "I understand." After the call ended, she looked at Sam. "We're leaving tomorrow, first thing in the morning." Sam nodded slowly. He'd known this moment was coming from the instant that photograph fell. "I'll get the car ready," he said. That night, Linda packed a small bag. She included the photograph of her daughters, the one that had fallen and broken. She included their birth certificates, medical records, anything that might prove who they were if, when, she found them. And she knelt by her bedside and prayed. "Thank you, God, for the sign. Thank you for not giving up on us. Please guide us. Please let this be real. Please let my babies be alive." Outside her window, stars appeared in the darkening sky. Tomorrow, they would drive to Michigan. Tomorrow, they would begin searching for the truth. Tomorrow, after 20 years of waiting, they might finally find their daughters. Or they might find nothing but another dead end and another devastating disappointment. But Linda couldn't think about that possibility. She could only think about 3 little girls who had called Evelyn Aunt Eve, who had trusted her completely, who might still be alive somewhere, waiting to be found. They left early Saturday morning, driving north through increasingly rural landscape. Ridgewood Hollow was barely a town, just a main street with a handful of buildings, most of which looked closed or abandoned. "This is it," Sam said, slowing the car as they entered what passed for downtown. According to the GPS, Linda studied the few businesses: a post office, a small grocery store, a diner, a church. "Let's start with the diner," Sam suggested. "People talk in small-town diners." Betty's kitchen was a weathered building with hand-painted signs. Inside, it was nearly empty, just an elderly couple in one booth and a man at the counter reading a newspaper. A woman in her 60s approached with menus. Her name tag read, "Betty." "Morning, folks. You two passing through?" "Sort of," Linda said. "Actually, we're trying to find information about someone who used to live here. Evelyn Hartwell? Her family had a house here back in the 80s. Betty's friendly expression flickered, just for a moment, into something more guarded. "Hartwell family, sure, I remember them. Old place out on Creek Road, though it's been sold a few times since then." "Do you remember Evelyn?" Sam asked. "A little. She was younger than me, didn't stick around town much. Moved away for college and only came back to visit her folks now and then." Betty poured their coffee. "Why are you looking for her?" Linda hesitated. "She was a friend of ours, a long time ago. We lost touch." Betty nodded slowly, clearly not entirely convinced, but too polite to press. "Well, the family's been gone from here for a long time. Can't say where Evelyn ended up." "Is there anyone else in town who might remember her better?" Betty considered. "Pastor Miller at the community church has been here forever. The Hartwells were regulars when they lived here." The church was a simple white building with a tall steeple. As they pulled into the parking lot, Linda noticed someone arranging flowers near the entrance. A young woman in her 20s with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Linda froze, staring at the woman's profile. "Sam," she whispered, "look at her." The young woman was carrying an armload of white lilies, humming softly to herself as she worked. When she turned slightly, Linda caught a glimpse of her face, the shape of her features, the curve of her jaw, something achingly familiar. "Linda, don't," Sam said, recognizing the look in his wife's eyes. But Linda was already getting out of the car, drawn forward by something she couldn't name. The young woman noticed them approaching and smiled politely. "Hello, can I help you?" "We're looking for Pastor Miller," Sam said quickly, before Linda could speak. "He's inside setting up for tomorrow's service. You can go right in." She shifted the flowers in her arms. "I'm June, by the way. I run the flower shop in town. Well, it's more of a flower farm, actually." "Linda, and this is my husband, Sam." Linda couldn't stop staring at the young woman's face. "Those are beautiful flowers." "Thank you. I grow them at Hollow Blossoms. That's my family's farm." June smiled, and something about that smile made Linda's breath catch. They thanked her and moved toward the church entrance, but Linda kept glancing back at the young woman arranging lilies in the morning sun. Inside Pastor Miller was an elderly man with white hair and kind eyes. When they asked about Evelyn Hartwell, his expression became thoughtful. "Evelyn Hartwell?" He paused, studying their faces carefully. "May I ask why you're looking for her?" Linda and Sam exchanged glances. "She was close to our family once, many years ago. We lost touch and were hoping to reconnect." The pastor's expression remained guarded. "I see. And you've come all this way from—" "Ohio," Sam said. "We were told her family had property here in Ridgewood Hollow." "The Hartwell family, yes. I knew them well." Pastor Miller's tone was careful, measured. "But I'm afraid I can't share personal information about members of our community without their permission. I hope you understand, in a small town like this, we look out for each other's privacy." "Of course," Linda said, trying to hide her disappointment. "We completely understand." "If you'd like to leave your contact information," the pastor offered diplomatically, "I could pass it along." Before they could respond, the church door opened. June entered carrying vases of white lilies, and behind her was another young woman, identical to June in every way. Linda's breath caught in her throat. "Oh, Pastor Miller," June said, noticing them. "Sorry to interrupt. We're just finishing up the flower arrangements." The two young women moved toward the altar, and Linda watched them with growing shock. They were unmistakably identical. The same height, same hair, same facial features, same graceful movements. "Excuse me," Linda said, her voice shaking slightly. "I'm sorry, but are you two twins?" June turned, smiling politely. "Yes, we are. I'm June, and this is my sister Elise." "Identical twins," Linda whispered, more to herself than anyone else. "Actually, there are 3 of us," Elise added casually. "Our other sister is back at the farm today." Linda grabbed Sam's arm so hard he winced. "3 of you?" "Yeah, people are always surprised when they meet all 3 of us together," June said with a light laugh. "We all look exactly alike. It confuses everyone." "Where?" Linda's voice came out strangled. "Where is this farm you mentioned?" "Hollow Blossoms. It's just outside town, about 15 minutes west." June gestured to the lilies. "That's where we grow all our flowers. Our aunt runs it. She raised us there." Sam's hand found Linda's, gripping so tightly his knuckles turned white. "Your aunt?" Linda managed to say. "Yeah, Aunt Lynn. She's owned the farm for years." June smiled. "Anyway, we should let you finish your conversation with Pastor Miller. It was nice meeting you both." As the 2 young women returned to arranging flowers, Linda stood frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe. 3 identical sisters, the right age, living with an aunt named Lynn. Sam cleared his throat, his voice barely steady. "Pastor, thank you for your time. We should be going." Pastor Miller looked between Linda's pale face and the 2 young women with growing concern, but he simply nodded. "Of course, safe travels." Sam practically had to drag Linda out of the church. Once they were outside, she collapsed against the car, gasping for air. "It's them," she whispered. "Sam, it's them, our daughters. She has them. Evelyn has had them this entire time." "We don't know that for certain." 3 identical sisters? Linda's voice rose. "The exact same age our girls would be, living with someone named Evelyn?" Sam gripped her shoulders. "Linda, listen to me. We need to be smart about this. If we call Detective Morrison now and we're wrong, we're not wrong. But if we are, we'll have wasted the detective's time and embarrassed ourselves. And if we're right. Sam paused, his voice dropping. If we're right, and we spook Evelyn before we have proof, she could run, again, and we'd lose them for another 20 years. Linda stared at her husband, her breathing slowly returning to normal. What are you saying? I'm saying we need to see more, talk to them, get concrete proof before we bring in the police. Sam pulled out his phone and opened the GPS. That farm, Hollow Blossoms, it's only 15 minutes from here. Let's go there, see what we can find out. What if Evelyn is there? Then we'll be careful. We'll pretend we're just visiting, interested in flowers for, I don't know, a wedding or something. We observe, we gather information, and then we call Detective Morrison with facts, not just suspicions. Linda nodded slowly. Her hands were still shaking, but Sam's logic was sound. After 20 years of false leads and dead ends, they couldn't afford to make a mistake now. Okay, she whispered. But Sam, if I see them, if I see our daughters, I don't know if I can. You can, Sam said firmly. You have to, for them. The drive to Hollow Blossoms took them deeper into the countryside. Fields stretched on either side of the narrow road, punctuated by stands of trees and the occasional farmhouse. Finally, they saw a weathered wooden sign. Hollow Blossoms Farm and Florist, with a painted lily beside the words. Sam turned down the long gravel driveway. As they rounded a bend, the farm came into full view, a sprawling two-story farmhouse with wraparound porches, several large greenhouses glinting in the afternoon sun, and multiple barn structures. It's beautiful, Linda said quietly, and there was pain in her voice. Pain at the thought that her daughters had grown up here, in this peaceful place, instead of in the home that had been waiting for them all these years. They parked near the main house. As they got out of the car, June emerged from one of the greenhouses, carrying a flat of seedlings. She smiled when she recognized them. Oh, hello again. From the church, right? June set down the seedlings and wiped her hands on her jeans. Did you decide to take Pastor Miller up on leaving your contact information for Aunt Lynn? Actually, Sam said smoothly, we were hoping to look around your farm. My wife and I are planning our daughter's wedding, and we're looking for a florist. Someone at the diner mentioned you do beautiful arrangements. It was a lie that came surprisingly easily. Linda shot him a grateful look. Oh, wonderful. June's face lit up. I'd be happy to show you around. Though I should mention, my aunt and my sisters are at the community fair today. We have a booth there, so it's just me holding down the fort. That's fine, Linda said, her voice catching slightly. Your sisters, plural. We'd love to see what you do here. June led them through the property, pointing out the different greenhouses, roses in one, lilies in another, seasonal flowers in a third. She explained their growing process, their commitment to organic methods, how they supplied flowers to weddings and events throughout the region. Linda watched her as she talked, the way she gestured with her hands when she was excited, the slight tilt of her head when she was thinking. Were these mannerisms inherited or learned? Had Lila done these same things as a child? This is our design studio, June said, opening the door to a renovated barn. Inside, long tables were covered with vases, ribbons, floral foam, and cutting tools. The walls were decorated with photos of elaborate arrangements, wedding bouquets, centerpieces, funeral wreaths. These are all your work? Sam asked. Mine and my sister's. We all learned from Aunt Lynn, June smiled. She raised us here after our parents died, taught us everything about flowers. Linda's hands clenched into fists at her sides. After our parents died, the lie that had stolen 20 years. I'm so sorry for your loss, she managed to say. Thank you. I was very young. I don't really remember them. None of us do. June's expression grew thoughtful. Sometimes I have dreams, though, fragments of things. A yellow door, a tire swing, a woman singing. She shook her head with a self-conscious laugh. Sorry, I don't know why I'm telling you this. Sometimes I wonder if they're real memories or just things I made up. Linda's eyes filled with tears. She turned away quickly, pretending to examine a photo on the wall. "Your aunt must be a wonderful woman," Sam said, his voice tight. "Raising 3 girls on her own." "She is. She gave up everything for us." June moved toward a small office area at the back of the barn. "Let me show you our portfolio book. You can see more examples of our wedding work." The office was compact but organized. A desk with a computer, filing cabinets, a small seating area, and on the desk, in a simple wooden frame, was a photograph. Linda saw it and stopped breathing. 3 little girls, perhaps 5 or 6 years old, identical in every way. They wore matching sundresses and stood with their arms around each other, grinning at the camera. And behind them, hands resting on their shoulders, was a younger Evelyn Hartwell. It was the same photograph, the exact same photograph that sat on Linda's dresser at home, the photo from the park, taken by Evelyn's late husband. "That's us," June said, noticing Linda's stare. "That's me, Elise, and Clara when we were little, with Aunt Lynn." Linda's hand moved toward the frame without her conscious control. She picked it up with trembling fingers, staring at the 3 faces she knew better than her own. "Where was this taken?" she whispered. "I'm not sure. Some park, I think. Aunt Lynn doesn't talk much about the early years. She says it's too painful, losing our parents so young and having to become a mother to 3 little girls overnight." Sam had moved to stand behind Linda. Over her shoulder, he stared at the photograph, at the proof they'd been searching for. "Are you okay?" June asked, concerned by their strange behavior. "You look pale." "I'm fine," Linda said, though her voice was shaking. She carefully set the frame back on the desk. "It's just, they're beautiful. You were beautiful children." "Thank you." June pulled out a leather portfolio. "Now, about wedding arrangements." But Linda wasn't listening anymore. She looked at Sam, and in his eyes she saw the same certainty that flooded through her own veins. These were their daughters, and Evelyn Hartwell had stolen them. Sam cleared his throat. "June, you mentioned your aunt and sisters are at a fair?" "Yes, the community fair at Riverside Park. It's just a few miles from here. They'll be there until evening. We have a booth promoting the farm." "Thank you," Sam said. "You've been very helpful." They made hasty excuses about needing to check their schedule, promised to be in touch about the wedding, and hurried back to their car. Once inside, Linda finally broke down. "That photo, Sam, that's the same photo, the exact same one from our house." "I know." Sam's jaw was clenched. "Evelyn must have had 2 copies made, one she gave to you back then and one she kept." "We have to call Detective Morrison, now." Sam was already pulling out his phone. As he started the car and drove back toward the main road, he dialed the detective's number. "Detective Morrison? It's Sam Calloway. Linda and I are in Michigan. We found them. We found our daughters." Sam had the phone on speaker as he drove. Detective Morrison's voice was sharp with urgency. "Mr. Calloway? Where exactly are you?" "We're leaving Hollow Blossoms Farm right now, heading toward Riverside Park. There's a community fair—" "Wait, slow down. Tell me exactly what you found." Sam explained quickly. The 3 identical sisters, the right age, living with Evelyn Hartwell, and then the photograph, the same photograph Linda had at home. And one of the young women, June, she confirmed it's a photo of her and her sisters as children with their Aunt Lynn, Sam added, his voice tight with controlled emotion. There was a pause on the line. "She confirmed that's them in the photograph, as children?" "Yes," Linda said, leaning toward the phone. "She said, 'That's us. That's me, Elise, and Clara when we were little, with Aunt Lynn.'" "The exact same photo we have at home, Detective. The one from the park, the one Evelyn's husband took." "That's very strong evidence," the detective said, her voice tight with controlled urgency. "If those 3 women have the exact same photograph and they're claiming it's them as children with Aunt Lynn, that directly connects them to Evelyn and to you. That's not circumstantial anymore. That proves identity." "So you believe us?" Linda asked, her voice breaking with relief and hope. "Yes, combined with everything else, 3 identical girls, The right age, Evelyn's motive, her disappearance after violating parole, this is enough to act on. I'm contacting Michigan State Police immediately. But we need DNA confirmation, right? Sam asked. For a conviction in court, yes. But we have probable cause for questioning and potentially arrest right now. That photograph is critical evidence. It directly links those young women to you and proves Evelyn's connection. Detective Morrison's tone became stern and urgent, which is exactly why you two cannot approach Evelyn Hartwell. Do you understand me? If she realizes we're onto her, she could run again, or worse, if she's kept those girls for 20 years through lies and manipulation, confronting her directly could put everyone in danger. We're not going to confront her, Sam said. We just want to see them, all three of them together. We need to see all three of our daughters with our own eyes. No. Detective Morrison's voice was firm and commanding. You need to wait for local law enforcement. I'm contacting Michigan State Police right now as we speak. Where did you say this fair is? Riverside Park, just outside Ridgewood Hollow. I need you to stay away from there. Go back to your hotel, give me the exact address of the farm and the fair, and let the authorities handle this. If you approach Evelyn before we can coordinate with local police, you could spook her, you could ruin the case, and you could put those young women in danger. Do you understand me? Sam looked at Linda. She was staring out the window, her jaw set in that stubborn way he knew so well. Her hands were clenched in her lap, trembling. Mrs. Calloway? Mr. Calloway? I need to hear you say you understand. There was a long silence in the car. Detective, Sam said carefully, his voice low, we're already on the road to the fair. We'll be there in 5 minutes. Mr. Calloway, we've waited 20 years. 20 years of not knowing if our daughters were alive or dead, and now they're 15 minutes away from us. Sam's voice was steady but resolute. We'll be careful. We won't approach Evelyn, but we need to see our daughters. Sam, listen to me. We'll call you when we get there. Sam ended the call. Linda reached over and squeezed his hand, tears streaming down her face. Thank you. I just hope we're doing the right thing. They drove in tense silence. Signs for Riverside Park appeared, directing them to turn left, then right. They could see colorful tents and banners in the distance, hear the faint sound of music and voices carrying on the afternoon breeze. Sam parked in the grass lot that had been set up for the fair. It was crowded. This was clearly a big event for the small community. Families wandered between booths, children ran with cotton candy and balloons. The smell of fried food hung in the warm afternoon air. How do we find them? Linda asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Look for the Hollow Blossoms booth, or just look for identical women. They moved through the fair slowly, Linda's eyes scanning every face, every booth. Her heart raced with anticipation and fear. After 20 years of searching, they were so close. Local crafts, homemade jams and preserves, a petting zoo, a stage where someone was setting up sound equipment. And then Linda grabbed Sam's arm, her fingers digging in so hard it hurt. There. A white tent with a green banner, Hollow Blossoms Farm and Florist. 3 long tables displayed flower arrangements, potted plants, and pamphlets, and behind those tables stood 2 young women, identical to June, wearing matching green aprons, Elise and Clara, Rowan and Mira. Linda's vision blurred with tears, 2 of them. She was looking at 2 of her daughters. But where was the third? Where was Evelyn? As if in answer to her unspoken question, an older woman emerged from behind the tent, carrying a box of supplies. Silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. Sharp features that had grown more angular with age. Evelyn Hartwell, 20 years older, but unmistakably her. Linda's breath stopped. For a moment the noise of the fair faded away, and there was only that face, the face of the woman who had destroyed her life. Evelyn set down the box and turned, and her eyes met Linda's across 30 feet of trampled grass. Recognition flashed across Evelyn's face, followed immediately by shock, then by fear. For 3 heartbeats they stared at each other, 20 years of questions, 20 years of pain, 20 years of searching, all condensed into that single moment of eye contact. Then Evelyn's expression hardened into something desperate, something panicked. She grabbed Elise's arm and said something sharp, urgent. Both girls looked confused. "No," Linda said, starting forward. "No, you don't get to run again." Sam was right behind her. "Linda, wait." But Linda was already pushing through the crowd, her eyes locked on Evelyn and her daughters. Evelyn saw them coming. She said something urgent to Clara, and all three of them started moving away from the booth, heading toward the parking area. "Stop!" Linda shouted. "Please stop!" People turned to stare. Conversations halted. Several fairgoers pulled out their phones. Elise and Clara looked back, their faces confused and frightened. "Aunt Lynn, what's going on?" Clara asked, her voice rising with alarm. "Get to the truck," Evelyn said, her voice tight with panic. "Both of you, now!" "But the booth, now!" The sharp command made both girls flinch. They'd probably never heard Evelyn speak like that before. Linda was running now, Sam beside her. "Those are my daughters," Linda screamed. "She took my daughters!" Heads turned throughout the fair. The music from the stage cut off. People were staring, confused, some beginning to pull out phones to call for help. Evelyn reached a white pickup truck and fumbled with her keys. Elise and Clara climbed into the passenger side, their faces pale with confusion and fear. Linda reached the truck just as Evelyn got the driver's door open. "Evelyn, please," Linda said, her voice breaking. "Please don't do this again." For a moment, just a moment, Evelyn met her eyes, and in that moment, Linda saw guilt, fear, defiance, and something that might have been regret, all warring in her expression. "They're mine," Evelyn said quietly, but with fierce conviction. "I raised them. They're mine. They were never yours to take." Evelyn climbed into the truck and slammed the door. Sam grabbed Linda's arm, pulling her back as the engine roared to life. "Call 911, Sam shouted to the growing crowd. "Someone call 911. The truck lurched forward, tires spinning on the grass, kicking up dirt and debris. Linda and Sam ran for their car. Sam drove faster than he'd driven in decades, keeping the white pickup truck in sight as it sped down the country road away from the fair. Linda had her phone to her ear, speaking rapidly to a 911 dispatcher. "Yes, I'm calling about a kidnapping. No, not right now. 20 years ago. The suspect is fleeing in a white pickup truck, heading west on County Road 47. In the truck ahead of them, Linda could see three heads. Evelyn's in the driver's seat, Elise and Clara pressed together on the passenger side. Even from this distance, even in her panic, Linda's heart ached. Her babies, her daughters, who had no idea who she was. "She's turning," Sam said. The pickup swerved onto a smaller road, gravel spitting from its tires. Sam followed, their sedan fishtailing slightly before he regained control. "Please be careful," Linda whispered, though she didn't know if she was talking to Sam or to some higher power. "Please don't let them get hurt." The road twisted through dense forest. The pickup was pulling ahead. Evelyn clearly knew these roads better than they did. Then, suddenly, sirens. In the rearview mirror, red and blue lights flashed. A sheriff's vehicle had appeared behind them. "Thank God," Sam breathed. The sheriff's car accelerated, pulling alongside them, and then past them. Within seconds, a second patrol car appeared from a side road ahead, lights flashing, positioning itself to block the narrow road. Evelyn's truck slowed, then stopped, trapped between the two patrol cars. Sam pulled over behind the first sheriff's vehicle. Linda had her seatbelt off and her door open before they'd fully stopped. Two deputies were already approaching the truck, hands hovering near their holsters. "Step out of the vehicle," one called. Evelyn didn't move. Through the windshield, Linda could see her gripping the steering wheel, her face a mask of anguish. Elise and Clara looked terrified. "Ma'am, we need you to exit the vehicle now," the deputy repeated, his voice firm. Slowly, Evelyn opened her door and stepped out. Her hands were shaking. "Those are my daughters," Linda said, walking toward the deputies, Sam right beside her. "In that truck. Those are my daughters. They were taken from our home in Ohio in 1981. One deputy, older, with gray at his temples, looked at her skeptically. "Ma'am, we got a call about an incident at the fair, but—" "Call Detective Sarah Morrison, Willow Creek Police Department, Ohio," Sam said. He pulled out his phone and showed them a photo, the old picture of 3 6-year-old girls in matching overalls. Then he pointed at the truck, where Elise and Clara's faces were visible through the windshield. "That's them, 20 years older, but that's them." The deputy's expression changed. He spoke into his radio, requesting backup and asking for confirmation on the Calloway case. Elise and Clara had gotten out of the truck now, standing together, holding hands, their faces showing identical confusion and fear. "Aunt Lynn?" Elise said, her voice shaking. "What's happening? Who are these people?" Evelyn's face crumpled. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." "Sorry for what?" Clara's voice was barely a whisper. Linda took a step toward them, her whole body trembling. "Your names," she said, her voice breaking. "Your real names are Lila, Rowan, and Mira Calloway. You were born on February 15th, 1975, in Willow Creek, Ohio. You're my daughters." The 2 young women stared at her with identical expressions of shock. "That's not true," Clara whispered. "Our parents died, in a car accident, when we were babies." "No." Linda shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No, sweetheart, we didn't die. We've been looking for you for 20 years. You were taken from our front yard while you were playing. You were 6 years old." "She's lying," Evelyn said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Girls, don't listen to her." One of the deputies stepped forward, placing a hand on Evelyn's arm. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with us to the station." "No." Evelyn tried to pull away. "You don't understand. I saved them. Their mother—" She pointed at Linda with a shaking hand. "She destroyed my life. Everything I had she took from me. I gave those girls a home. I gave them love. I gave them everything." "You stole them," Sam said, his voice hard with 20 years of suppressed rage. "You took our children. You made us believe they were dead. You let us suffer for 20 years. "I gave them a better life than you ever could have," Evelyn shouted, her composure finally shattering completely. "You were so focused on your career, your perfect life. You didn't deserve them." "And you did?" Linda's voice rose to match Evelyn's. "You who couldn't have children of your own, so you stole mine?" The words hit Evelyn like a physical blow. She staggered slightly, and the deputy's grip on her arm tightened. Elise was crying now, quiet sobs that shook her shoulders. Clara had both arms wrapped around herself, as if trying to hold her world together as it fell apart. "I don't understand," Elise said. "Aunt Lynn, tell them they're wrong. Tell them." Evelyn looked at the 2 young women, at the daughter she had raised for 20 years, with love built on lies. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't tell you they're wrong." Clara's knees buckled. Elise caught her, and they clung to each other. Another vehicle appeared, a newer pickup, green, driving fast. It skidded to a stop behind Linda and Sam's car, and June jumped out. "What's going on?" June called, running toward them. "Someone at the fair said Aunt Lynn and my sisters—" She stopped, taking in the scene. The sheriff's vehicles, her aunt in the deputy's grip, her sisters crying, and 2 strangers she'd met only hours before. "June," Evelyn started, but Linda was already moving toward her. "Your name is Lila," she said gently. "Lila, Marianne Calloway, and those are your sisters, Rowan and Mira." June looked between Linda, her aunt, and her sisters. "I don't understand." "The photo," Sam said. "The one in your office, of you and your sisters as children, with Evelyn." "What about it?" "We have the same photo, the exact same one, because we were there that day, at the park. Evelyn was our friend then. Her husband took that picture, and he made 2 copies, one for us and one for Evelyn." June's face went pale. "That's impossible." "It's not," Linda said softly. "June, Lila, you told me you have dreams, a yellow door, a tire swing, a woman singing. Those are just dreams." "No." Linda's voice was gentle but firm. "They're memories of your real home, of us." The deputy's radio crackled. He listened for a moment, then looked at Linda and Sam with new respect. Detective Morrison confirms your story. The Calloway case, 1981. 3 identical triplets, age 6, disappeared from Willow Creek, Ohio, never found. He turned to Evelyn. Ma'am, I'm placing you under arrest for kidnapping. No! Evelyn struggled as the deputy pulled out handcuffs. Please, you can't. They're my daughters. I raised them. I love them. You kidnapped them, the deputy said firmly, securing the cuffs. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. As the Miranda rights were read, June walked slowly toward her sisters. The 3 of them stood together, identical faces, showing identical devastation. Is it true? June asked Evelyn, her voice breaking. Did you take us? Did you lie to us our whole lives? Evelyn's face was wet with tears. I did what I had to do. I loved you. I gave you everything. Accept the truth, Clara said, her voice hollow. Accept our real parents. Accept our real lives. You were better off with me, Evelyn insisted, even as the deputy began leading her toward the patrol car. She never would have loved you the way I did. That wasn't your decision to make, Linda shouted after her. Evelyn was placed in the back of the sheriff's car, still crying, still insisting she had done the right thing. The older deputy approached Linda and Sam. We're going to need you to come to the station, give full statements. Detective Morrison is already on her way here from Ohio. She's about 2 hours out. What about them? Linda asked, looking at her daughters. They'll need to come too. We'll need to take statements from everyone. He paused, his expression softening. This is going to be a long process, Mr. and Mrs. Calloway. These young women have lived their whole lives believing one thing. It's going to take time for them to accept the truth. Linda nodded, her throat too tight to speak. Sam put his arm around her. We understand. We've waited 20 years. We can wait a little longer. But as they all began moving toward the various vehicles, the deputies, Evelyn in custody, and 3 young women whose entire world had just shattered, June turned back. She looked at Linda for a long moment, studying her face. That song, June said quietly, the one I hear in my dreams. How does it go? Linda's breath caught. With a trembling voice, she sang softly, Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. June's eyes filled with tears. I know that song, she whispered. I know it. It wasn't a reunion, not yet. But it was something. It was the first crack in the wall that Evelyn had built between them. And through that crack, light was beginning to shine. The sheriff's office in Silverton, the nearest town with a proper police facility, was a small, outdated building with flickering fluorescent lights and worn linoleum floors. It was nearly 10 p.m. by the time everyone arrived. Evelyn was taken directly to an interrogation room. The 3 sisters, June, Elise, and Clara, were brought to a waiting area with a victim's advocate, a kind woman in her 40s who spoke to them in low, soothing tones. Linda and Sam were placed in a separate room. Not quite an interrogation room, but not quite a waiting area either. A room that existed in the uncertain space between victim and witness. They sat close together on a worn couch, neither speaking, both too overwhelmed by the last few hours. Linda's hands wouldn't stop shaking. Sam kept his arm around her shoulders, anchoring her. Detective Morrison arrived just after 11 p.m., having driven from Ohio at speeds that probably violated multiple traffic laws. She was a woman in her early 50s with short gray hair and sharp but kind eyes. She'd been working the Calloway case for 15 years. She found Linda and Sam and sat down across from them, her expression serious but compassionate. Mr. and Mrs. Calloway, I need you to know, Evelyn Hartwell has confessed to everything. Linda's breath caught. Everything? Everything. Detective Morrison opened a folder, glancing at her notes. She admitted that on June 12, 1981, she left the halfway house in Cleveland without permission. The facility's sign-in sheets were forged. She paid another resident to sign her name at the mandatory therapy session. So she was never there, Sam said. Not that afternoon, no. She drove to Willow Creek, parked a few blocks from your house, and waited. When she saw the girls playing alone in the yard, she approached them. They recognized her immediately, called her Aunt Eve. She offered them ice cream and told them she wanted to show them something special. Linda covered her mouth with her hand, tears spilling down her cheeks. They got into her car willingly, the detective continued. They trusted her. She drove them to a rental property she'd secured 2 weeks earlier in another county, paid cash, used a false name. Over the following days and weeks, she gradually convinced them that their parents had been killed in an accident. She showed them fabricated newspaper clippings. She told them their last name was now Hartwell, that she was their aunt and their legal guardian. They believed her, Linda whispered. They were 6 years old and she was an adult they loved and trusted. Yes, they believed her. Detective Morrison's voice was gentle. After 6 months, she moved them to Michigan. Her family had owned farmland near Ridgewood Hollow, a separate property from the main house that was later sold. She established Hollow Blossoms Farm there and raised them in isolation for the first few years before gradually integrating them into the community. Sam's jaw was clenched so tightly Linda could hear his teeth grinding. For 20 years. Yes, she homeschooled them initially, then enrolled them in a small private school under false documents. Birth certificates, social security numbers, all forged. She created an entire identity for each of them. But why? Linda's voice broke. Why would she do this? Detective Morrison closed the folder. She blames you, Mrs. Calloway, for reporting the embezzlement, for her arrest and imprisonment. She said, and these are her words, that you destroyed her life, so she took what mattered most to you. But she also insists that she loved the girls, that she gave them a better life than they would have had with you. That wasn't her decision to make, Sam said, his voice hard. No, it wasn't. The detective stood. She'll be charged with 3 counts of kidnapping, 3 counts of custodial interference, identity fraud, and several other charges. She's facing multiple life sentences. But right now, she looked at Linda and Sam. Right now, there are 3 young women in the other room who just learned their entire lives were built on lies, and they need to understand what really happened. Linda stood, her legs unsteady. Can we see them? Yes, but Linda, Sam, I need you to understand something. These women don't remember you. They don't remember being Lila, Rowan, and Mira. For 20 years, they've been June, Elise, and Clara Hartwell. You're strangers to them. We know, Linda said quietly, but they're our daughters, and they deserve to know the truth. Detective Morrison nodded and led them down a narrow hallway to a small conference room. The 3 sisters sat together on one side of a long table, still wearing the green aprons from the fair. Their faces were identical masks of shock and confusion. The victim's advocate sat nearby, a box of tissues within reach. Linda and Sam entered slowly, and 6 pairs of eyes met. 3 daughters, 2 parents, all of them strangers. Please sit down, Detective Morrison said, gesturing to chairs on the opposite side of the table. The physical distance felt both necessary and unbearable. I know this is overwhelming, the detective began, and I know you've been told things tonight that contradict everything you've believed your whole lives. But I want you to understand, your parents, Linda and Sam Calloway, never stopped looking for you, not for one day in 20 years. June, Lila, looked at Linda with an expression that was part curiosity, part fear. You really think we're your daughters? I don't think, Linda said gently. I know. You were born on February 15th, 1975, at 6:23 in the morning. Your sisters followed at 6:31 and 6:47. We named you Layla Marianne, Rowan Marianne, and Mira Marianne. All 3 of you had the same middle name, Marianne, after Sam's mother who had passed away the year before. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folder, the same one she'd brought to the farm earlier. She slid it across the table. These are your birth certificates, hospital records, Photos from your first 6 years. The three sisters leaned in together, opening the folder with trembling hands. Birth certificates with names they'd never heard. Photos of 3 newborns in hospital bassinets, 3 toddlers taking first steps, 3 little girls blowing out birthday candles. "That's us," Mira whispered, pointing to a photo of 3 girls on a tire swing. "But I don't remember any of this." "You were 6 when you were taken," Sam said. "It's normal that you don't remember clearly. Evelyn worked very hard to make you forget." Elise, Rowan, was staring at a photo of the 3 girls with an orange and white cat. "Pumpkin?" she said suddenly. "His name was Pumpkin." Linda's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, he was your cat. You named him because of his orange color." "I thought I made that up," Elise said, her voice breaking. "I've remembered that cat my whole life, and Aunt Lynn said I must have seen it in a movie or a dream. But it was real." "It was real," Linda confirmed. "All of it was real. The yellow door, the tire swing, the house on Maple Street." June was still staring at the birth certificate with her name on it. "Lila Marianne Calloway," she read aloud, testing the sound of it. "That's supposed to be me?" "That's who you are," Linda said softly. "That's who you've always been, even if you didn't know it." "But we've been June, Elise, and Clara for 20 years, Mira said. "That's who we are. That's who we know how to be." "And no one is asking you to stop being those people," Sam said. "You've built lives, identities, memories. Those are real too. But you also deserve to know the truth about where you came from." The 3 sisters looked at each other, that silent communication only triplets shared. "The photo," June said finally. "The one in our office, of us with Aunt Lynn at the park." "We have the same photo," Linda said. "It was taken by Evelyn's husband, back when she was our friend, before everything happened. He made 2 copies, one for us and one for her." "So you really were there," Elise said. "You really knew us." "We knew you," Sam said, his voice thick with emotion. "We loved you. We love you still." Detective Morrison spoke up. "DNA tests will be conducted to confirm everything, but given the evidence, the identical triplets, the right age, the birth certificates, the photograph, there's no doubt. You are Lila, Rowan, and Mira Calloway." Clara pressed her hands against her face. "I don't know how to process this. Our entire childhood was a lie. Everything Aunt Lynn told us, about our parents dying, about who we were, it was all fake." "Not everything," Linda said gently. "She did love you. In her own twisted way, she loved you. But that doesn't make what she did right." "She stole us," June said, the reality finally sinking in. "She stole us from you." "Yes." June looked at Linda, really looked at her, studying her face as if seeing it for the first time. "That song, the one about stars, you sang it to us?" "Every night," Linda said, her voice breaking. "Every single night before bed. All 3 of you in your matching beds, and I'd sing until you fell asleep." June's eyes filled with tears. "I can almost remember. Almost." "It's okay if you don't," Linda said. "We have time. We have all the time in the world now." But even as she said it, Linda knew it wasn't entirely true. They'd lost 20 years. 20 years of first days of school and skinned knees and teenage heartbreaks and graduations. 20 years they could never get back. The silence stretched between them. 2 parents and 3 daughters, connected by blood and DNA and stolen memories, separated by 2 decades of lies. Finally, June stood. She walked slowly around the table, stopping in front of Linda. "I don't remember you," she said quietly, "but I'd like to. I'd like to try." Linda stood as well, tears streaming down her face. "That's all I could ever ask for." And then, tentatively, carefully, June stepped forward and let Linda hug her. It wasn't the reunion Linda had dreamed of during 20 years of searching. There was no instant recognition, no flood of recovered memories, no tearful declarations of, "I remember everything." But it was real. It was a beginning. Elise and Clara stood as well, moving closer. Sam wrapped his arms around all of them, 5 people who should have been a family for 26 years, but had only just found each other again. They stood there in that small conference room with its flickering lights and worn carpet, holding each other, crying together for what was lost, for what might have been, and for what might still be possible. Outside the window, the night had deepened. Stars appeared in the vast Michigan sky, the same stars that had watched over them for 20 years of separation. Inside, a family torn apart by one woman's twisted obsession began the first tentative moments of healing. It would take time. It would take years, probably. There would be therapy and awkward conversations and moments when the gap of 20 years seemed insurmountable. But they had found each other. After 2 decades of searching, of hoping, of refusing to give up, they had found each other. And for now, in this moment, that was enough. Finally, miraculously, they were complete once more. Thanks for watching. If this story got to you, hit like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe so you don't miss the next mystery. See you soon.